Welcome to Family Shadows, a channel for tales of life's third act. Settle in and listen to the story. The day after Christmas, my husband kicked me out of the car for his sister's dog. I laughed and sold the mansion. The security guard's words when they returned left them speechless. On the morning of December 26th, Grace was unceremoniously shoved out of her own car by her husband in the middle of the street just to give a more comfortable spot to a dog. But her husband's family had no idea it would be the most expensive mistake of their lives. In the 4 days they were gone, their $3 million mansion silently vanished. The shocking secrets in a hidden safe were exposed, and a cold, calculated plan of retribution was set in motion. Upon their return, what awaited them wasn't a warm, welcoming home, but a living hell. What did Grace do to bring this treacherous family to their knees? It was the day after Christmas in Newport Beach, California. The early morning sun was already beating down on the asphalt, promising a typically hot Southern California day. In the exclusive gated community, the air was so still and quiet you could hear the chirping of sparrows and the purple jacaranda trees lining the entrance. I'm Grace, 32, a sales director for a major food corporation. Wiping sweat from my brow, I dragged 2 large suitcases from the house onto the driveway. To prepare for the family's 4-day, 3-night ski trip to Lake Tahoe, I had been up since 5 a.m. I had packed everything, from coolers filled with sandwiches and bottled water to motion sickness pills and icy hot for my mother-in-law. It was the same every year. I was more of a high-end housekeeper than a daughter-in-law or a wife, but I accepted it, believing it was the price of family happiness. The pearl-white Cadillac Escalade sat gleaming in the driveway. It was the very car for which I had just completed the title transfer 2 weeks before Christmas. The monthly payment devoured nearly a third of my base salary. I looked at the car with a sense of pride. This year, I would be driving the family, which meant more control and no more cramming into a crowded shuttle bus like in previous years. The rear hatch was open, but the cargo space was already packed to the brim with my mother-in-law's and sister-in-law's foam coolers and suitcases. I frowned, trying to find a gap to squeeze my own luggage into, but it was hopeless. They had packed enough belongings for a cross-country move, not a 4-day trip. Well, I'll just put my bags on the back seat, I muttered, pulling my suitcase toward the rear passenger door. The doors swung open, and the tired smile on my face froze. The spacious middle-row captain's chairs, where I had planned to sit and catch a nap after the exhausting Christmas festivities, were already occupied. Brenda, my mother-in-law, was sitting by the far door, fanning herself with a brochure, her face scrunched up from the heat. Beside her was Tiffany, my 25-year-old sister-in-law, wearing headphones and glued to her phone screen. But what made the blood in my veins turn to ice was the spot between them. Lounging majestically on the plush, cream-colored leather was Gigi, Tiffany's reddish-brown poodle. The dog was perched on a massive velvet pillow, taking up the space of a full-grown adult. Its 4 legs were stretched out in blissful comfort. I stood frozen, my hand still gripping the suitcase handle. Brenda, Tiffany, why is everyone sitting like this? Where am I supposed to sit? I asked, my voice straining to remain calm, assuming they were just joking or hadn't finished arranging things. Brenda glanced at me over her reading glasses, which had slipped down her nose. Her voice was as grating as sandpaper on wood. The car is full. Are you blind? The back is stuffed with all of Tiffany's Instagram outfits and gifts for her friends up there. There's no room. But what about Gigi? I pointed at the dog. Why is the dog on my seat? Put her on the floor or in a carrier in the back, Brenda. Tiffany finally pulled off one earbud, her face contorting as if I had just said something deeply offensive. Are you serious, Grace? Gigi is a purebred. You want her on the dirty floor? And if we put her in the back, she could suffocate. She gets carsick. The vet said she needs to be in a ventilated spot with the AC blowing on her so she doesn't throw up. Stop being so cruel to animals. I was stunned. Cruel? I worked my butt off to pay for this car. I was paying for the gas, and I was bankrolling this entire trip, only to be called cruel for wanting a seat in my own vehicle. I turned my gaze to the driver's seat. Kevin, my husband, had been silent the whole time. He was adjusting the rear-view mirror, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel, deliberately avoiding my eyes. Kevin, I said, my voice hardening. Say something. Your wife is standing out here, and that dog is sitting in there. Does that seem right to you? Kevin flinched and turned to me, a pained, pathetic look on his face. He was always like this in front of his mother and sister. He shriveled up like a spineless coward. Look, Grace, he stammered. It really is too crowded. Mom is getting older and needs her space. And Tiffany, well, she spoils that dog. Just try to be understanding. Understanding? I repeated, feeling my chest about to explode. So, where do you suggest I sit? On the roof? Kevin cleared his throat, avoiding my sharp gaze. Hey, why don't you just take a Greyhound up? You can probably still get a ticket at the station. Or, maybe just stay home. There are a lot of break-ins around the holidays, and I wouldn't feel right leaving the house empty. You could stay home, guard the house, and get some rest. Lake Tahoe is going to be crowded and exhausting anyway. The world around me seemed to stop. The buzz of cicadas in the trees suddenly felt deafening. I looked at the man I had called my husband for the past 5 years. He was 34, a mid-level accountant with a meager salary. Every major and minor expense in our house, from changing a light bulb to his mother's prescription copays, fell on me. And now, in front of his mother and sister, he was casually cutting me out of the family vacation, treating me as less valuable than a pet, and demoting me to an unpaid house sitter. Brenda pursed her lips, delivering the final, venomous blow. Kevin has a point. You should stay home. During Christmas, I noticed you were a bit lazy with the hosting duties. Stay here and clean up the kitchen, polish the silver. Going on a trip is just expensive and stressful. It's settled then. Let's go. Kevin, we're burning daylight. Tiffany quickly slammed the car door shut, as if afraid I might lunge in and drag her precious dog out. She shot me a smirk over her shoulder. Have fun at home, sis-in-law. I'll bring you back a souvenir t-shirt. Kevin hurriedly put the car in gear. The Escalade lurched forward. He didn't even have the courage to roll down the window and say a proper goodbye. The vehicle rolled out of the driveway, leaving me standing alone in the glaring sun with my 2 heavy suitcases, a cloud of exhaust and dust stinging my eyes. The acrid smell of the fumes wasn't half as bitter as the taste rising in my throat. 5 years of being a daughter-in-law, and I had endured it all. I split my salary 3 ways, paying off my husband's student loans, giving his mother an allowance, and supporting his unemployed sister. This mansion was purchased with money from the sale of a property my parents left me before I got married, plus 10 years of my own savings. But because I believed Kevin's sweet words when we were newlyweds that a husband and wife should be a team, I foolishly agreed to put his name on the deed. I thought my sacrifice would earn me respect. But no, in their eyes, I was just a walking ATM, and my status in this family ranked below that of Gigi the poodle. The resentment that had been simmering for years finally boiled over. But strangely, I didn't cry. The tears seemed to have run dry after countless nights waiting for a drunk husband to come home, after countless times of being berated by my mother-in-law for not yet producing a son. I watched the car disappear around the corner. An icy chill ran down my spine, spreading through my entire body and pushing away the oppressive California heat. I let out a laugh, a sharp, twisted, mirthless sound. Guard the house? You bet I will, I whispered, pulling my suitcases back inside. The sound of their wheels scraping against the concrete driveway was a harsh, determined rhythm, echoing the resolve in my heart. I pushed the heavy iron gate closed and locked it. The 4,000-square-foot mansion was eerily quiet. I looked at the expensive Italian leather sofa, the imported wine cabinet Kevin loved to show off to his friends, the tacky feng shui art Brenda had plastered on the walls. All of it paid for with my money. I took a deep breath and pulled my phone out of my purse. The screen lit up. 9:30 a.m., December 26th. I dialed the number of Mark, an old friend who was a top real estate agent in Orange County. Hey Mark, it's Grace. My voice was so calm, it surprised even me. I remember you said you had a client looking for a mansion in Newport Beach, right? I want to sell mine. Yeah, right now. It's an urgent sale. On the other end, Mark stammered in shock. I cut him off, my voice like ice. I'm listing it at a 20% discount from market value. I have only one condition: full payment in cash or a wire transfer within the next 3 days. Can you make that happen? I hung up and tossed the phone onto the sofa. My gaze fell on our wedding photo hanging on the living room wall. In the picture, I was beaming, and Kevin was looking at me with adoration. I walked over, took the photo down, and without a moment's hesitation, threw it into the trash can. The sound of shattering glass was jarring. But to me, it was the opening note of a new life. They wanted me to watch the house. I would watch it in a way they would never, ever forget. The wall clock struck 10 a.m. The sun outside was now intense, piercing through the white linen curtains and casting long stripes of light across the polished hardwood floors. The mansion was as silent as a beautiful tomb. After the whirlwind call with Mark, I sank into the Italian leather sofa, an extravagant piece I had ordered 3 months before Christmas to have it ready for our holiday party. The cool touch of the leather against my skin sent a shiver through me, pulling me back to the stark reality of the situation. I sat there, staring blankly into space, my mind replaying the last 5 years like a worn-out film. I had married Kevin for his seemingly gentle, almost meek nature. As a woman who thrived in the cutthroat world of corporate sales, surrounded by numbers and pressure, all I wanted was a peaceful haven. I had mistaken his weakness for kindness, and his mother's scheming for the concerned guidance of an elder. This mansion, on paper, was joint property. But in reality, 90% of the funds came from my 10 years of savings and the inheritance my parents had left me. Kevin's contribution? A paltry $20,000 he had borrowed from friends, a debt that I later ended up quietly paying off for him. I stood up and walked to the home office. I needed to check our finances before taking my next step. Despite my fury, the instincts of a sales director wouldn't let me act without a solid plan. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint bank account. I had set it up to manage household expenses, and it was primarily funded by my salary, covering everything from groceries and utilities to gifts for both sides of the family and the mortgage payments. Kevin had a debit card linked to it, but rarely used it, as I always kept cash in his wallet for him. The account balance appeared on the screen. I scrolled through the transaction history, and my heart skipped a beat. December 25th. A wire transfer out, $15,000. The memo read, "Happy birthday to my baby girl." The recipient, Crystal Nguyen. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. There was no mistake. $15,000. It was the money I had just deposited before Christmas as a buffer for the next principal mortgage payment. My hands started to tremble, not from the loss of money, but from a wave of revulsion rising in my throat. My baby girl. Kevin, the husband who couldn't even look me in the eye this morning, the man who constantly complained about his low salary, had generously spent $15,000 on another woman on Christmas Day. Meanwhile, that same man left his wife stranded on the street to prioritize a dog's comfort. The irony was so bitter, I felt sick. I took a screenshot of the transaction, saving the evidence. My mind began connecting the dots. Kevin's recent late nights at work, supposedly for overtime. The hidden chats on his phone he'd quickly delete when I came near. The trendy new outfits Tiffany, my unemployed independent sister-in-law, had been flaunting lately. Could it be? I picked up the phone and called David. David was a high school friend who now ran a reputable private investigation firm in Los Angeles. David? Happy holidays. My voice was flat, devoid of any festive cheer. Grace. You too, boss lady. You sound serious. What's up? I need a huge favor, and it's urgent. I'm sending you an account number and a name. I need you to find out who this woman is, where she lives, and what her relationship is with my husband. The more detail, the better. Family matter? You suspect Kevin? It's past suspicion. I need legal proof. I need it fast. Money is no object. I want the results within 2 days. David agreed immediately. I sent him the screenshot. Just as I put the phone down, Mark, the realtor, called back. Grace, I just checked my client list. There's a tech mogul from San Francisco looking to buy a house for his daughter who's starting at USC. He loves Newport Beach because it's quiet. But what about the price? You said you'd take a cut. How much? I took a deep breath, looking around the office, which was elegantly furnished with oak. The market value for this place is $3 million. I'll sell it for $2.5 million. I'll include all the built-in fixtures and appliances. All cash. Mark was aghast. Are you insane? $2.5 million is a steal. You're losing $500,000. And what about the legal paperwork? The deed is in both your names. How are you going to get Kevin to sign? A faint smile touched my lips as my eyes landed on the filing cabinet in the corner. Mark, do you remember last year when Kevin's little startup needed an emergency cash infusion? I had to use the house as collateral to get a bank loan for him. Because he was too lazy and clueless to handle the paperwork, he signed a full, notarized power of attorney over to me, giving me complete control over the property. It's valid for 5 years. I have the right to sell, transfer, or gift it without his signature. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then Mark's voice boomed with excitement. My God, Grace, that's a checkmate move. If you have that power of attorney, and you're offering it for $2.5 million. I can close this deal this afternoon. This client has cash on hand and is ready to make a significant deposit immediately. Good. Schedule a viewing for 2 p.m. today. I want everything settled before my family gets back from Lake Tahoe. They're gone for 4 days. You have 3 days to finalize the closing and the payment. I'm on my way. I hung up and sat in silence for a few more minutes. $15,000 for a mistress, the contempt of my in-laws, and a fateful power of attorney. The disparate pieces suddenly clicked together perfectly, forming a brutal picture of my marriage. Kevin had been paving the way for his betrayal for a long time, and I, unknowingly, had paved the way for my own liberation with a legal document he never understood the true power of. I stood up and began to pack my personal belongings, not for a trip, but for a permanent departure. I opened my closet and took only the things I had bought for myself. The designer handbags I'd earned after closing big deals, my work suits. I left behind all the pajamas and casual clothes Kevin had given me for my birthdays. As I passed my mother-in-law's bedroom, I paused. Brenda's door was slightly ajar. An idea sparked in my mind. She had a habit of hiding the key to her safe under the snake plant on her bedroom balcony. I pushed the door open. The room smelled of Bengay and stale potpourri. It was a mess, with clothes she hadn't bothered to wash strewn about. I walked out to the balcony and lifted the ceramic pot. The small, brass safe key was lying right there. I picked it up, the cold metal pressing into my palm. I had no intention of stealing her money. I just wanted to know what was inside the safe that she always claimed was empty, moaning that she was a poor old woman living off the charity of her children. And I wanted to see if there were any secrets related to the money I had poured into this family for the past 5 years. I went back inside of the safe, tucked in the corner, inserted the key, and turned. With a dry click, the heavy door swung open. And what I saw inside made me realize that Kevin's $15,000 transfer was just the tip of the iceberg. The heavy safe door swung open, releasing a musty smell of old paper. In the dim light, filtering through the window, stacks of documents lay silent, holding the power of a bomb. I held my breath and reached for the first stack on top. I expected to find old property deeds from back home or keepsakes from my deceased father-in-law. But no, it was a pile of CD statements. The first one, $50,000, deposited on January 15th of last year. I froze. That was the exact day I had given Brenda $50,000. She had begged for the money, claiming the roof of their old family home in the Midwest needed a complete overhaul. She had wept, telling me stories of rain leaking onto family photos. Moved by pity, I gave her my entire year-end bonus. It turned out the old roof was still leaking, while my money was sitting comfortably in a bank account under her name. The second statement, $100,000, deposited 2 months ago. This was the money I gave Kevin to invest in a business venture with a friend. He said it was an electronics import project with guaranteed high returns. I had to sell the gold jewelry my mother had given me as a wedding gift to provide him with the cash. It turned out his business partner was his own mother. I flipped through the rest of the statements. In total, there were 5 CDs, all under the name Brenda Miller, with a total value of over $250,000. It was all my money. The money I had earned through sweat and tears, working day and night. The money I had saved by skipping lunches and not buying a new tube of lipstick. The money I had scrimped and saved to provide for this family. They had systematically, methodically, and cruelly bled me dry. Brenda wasn't spending the money on the family. She was hoarding it all for herself, while simultaneously complaining about being poor so that I would continue to pay for groceries, utilities, and everything else. My hands trembled, and I dropped one of the statements. It fluttered down to the cold tile floor. The feeling of betrayal and exploitation rose in my throat, bitter and choking. I wasn't a daughter-in-law. I was a cash cow they were milking for all I was worth. But that wasn't all. Deeper inside the safe, under a red velvet lining, was a black folder containing a jumble of handwritten notes. I opened it curiously. IOUs. The borrower, Tiffany Miller. The amount, $50,000. Interest rate, 5% per week. Below were Tiffany's shaky signature and a red thumbprint. Tucked in with them were threatening collection notices with language straight out of a mob movie. I was horrified. Tiffany, the sister-in-law who always acted so chic, checking into luxury resorts on social media, was a degenerate gambler deep in debt to loan sharks. And worse, I found a small notebook of Brenda's, detailing her finances. October, Grace gave $3K for house repairs. Paid $2K to Tiff Sharks. Kept $1K. November. Told Grace my arthritis was bad. Needed $5K for specialist. Paid off principal for Shark. Big Tony. December. Kevin asked wife for money for master's degree tuition. Gave it to me to save. A chill ran down my spine. This entire family was a closed-circuit scam, and I was the sole victim. They conspired to create one sob story after another: sick mother, indebted sister, husband needing business capital, just to siphon my money to cover Tiffany's gambling habits and build Brenda's personal fortune. Ping, ping, ping. My phone buzzed with a series of notifications, shattering the terrifying silence of the room. It was a message from David, the P.I. It had only been an hour. He worked incredibly fast. I picked up the phone, and the images that appeared made my stomach clench with disgust. Image 1. Kevin with his arm around a much younger woman in a tight dress, standing in front of a Gucci store. This had to be Crystal Nguyen, the recipient of the $15,000. Image 2. An ultrasound photo. Patient's name, Crystal Nguyen. Gestational age, 16 weeks. Image 3. A screenshot of a text exchange on Kevin's phone. I zoomed in. Crystal. Babe. When are you finally going to leave that old hag? Our son is kicking. Kevin. Just be patient, honey. After the holidays, I'll trick her into selling her parents' old property. Once I have that money, I'll find a reason to divorce her. Right now, she's our cash cow. It would be a waste to dump her too soon. My mom agrees we should milk her for all she's worth. Love you and our little guy. The phone slipped from my hand, landing softly on Brenda's bed. Old hag, cash cow. Milk her for all she's worth. The words danced before my eyes, mocking the 5 years of my life I had dedicated to them. Their plan wasn't just to use me. It was to drain me completely and then discard the husk. The poodle getting my seat in the car this morning wasn't just a thoughtless act. It was a signal that my value in their eyes had plummeted to zero. They had found my replacement, a young, beautiful mistress carrying the male heir they so desperately wanted. I collapsed onto the floor, my back against the bed. There were no more tears, no more outrage. All that remained was a cold, terrifying clarity. I gathered all the CD statements, the IOUs, and Brenda's notebook. I used my phone to meticulously photograph every single page, every document. I even took a video of the safe's contents as proof. Then, I carefully put everything back exactly as I had found it. I closed the heavy safe door, the metallic thud sounding like a coffin lid slamming shut on my marriage. I wiped my fingerprints from the handle and the keypad, placed the key back under the snake plant on the balcony, and adjusted the pot to its original position. I walked out of Brenda's room, closing the door behind me. The clock read 12:30 p.m. I went downstairs to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, and drank it all in one go. The cool liquid washed away the vile taste in my throat. I needed energy. I needed absolute focus. Because at 2 p.m., the buyer was coming. I looked around the mansion one last time with the eyes of a stranger. There was no sentimentality, no fond memories. Every object in this house was now just an asset to be liquidated. I picked up my phone and sent Mark a short text. Bring a deposit contract. This sale is happening. And remember, this needs to be completely confidential until the deal is done. The purge had begun. No screaming, no dramatic confrontations. I would show them the door in the most seamless way possible, just as they had seamlessly drained the life out of me for 5 years. At precisely 2 p.m. on December 26th, a gleaming black Mercedes S-Class pulled up to the gate. Mark got out, followed by a middle-aged man with a commanding presence who exuded the quiet confidence of old money. This was Mr. Harrison, the tech mogul from San Francisco. Mr. Harrison stepped inside and scanned the room. His sharp, experienced eyes took in the leather sofa, the chandelier, and the direction of the afternoon sun. South-facing, he noted in a deep voice. Good light, solid construction, tasteful furnishings. Your firm on $2.5 million, all-inclusive? Yes, $2.5 million. Not a penny less. I'm leaving all built-in appliances and the sofa. The only condition is that the funds must be in my account by noon tomorrow, I replied, my voice steady. The sales director in me showed no hesitation. Mr. Harrison exchanged a quick glance with Mark, then turned back to me. Deal. But what about the legal side? The deed is in 2 names. Your husband isn't here to sign. I smiled and pulled a folder from my handbag. This is a fully executed power of attorney, notarized last year at the county clerk's office. It gives me, for a period of 5 years, the sole authority to manage this asset. I have full power to sell without his presence. Here is the original title. We can go to a private notary right now. I've already made an appointment with one who works through the holidays. Mr. Harrison took the document, examining every stamp and signature. It was 100% legal. He let out a hearty laugh. Young lady, you are remarkably efficient. I like that. Let's go. On the afternoon of the 27th, the ping from my banking app was the sweetest symphony I had ever heard. Your account has received a deposit of plus $2,450,000. The house was officially no longer mine and no longer ours. The moment the money cleared, a 26-foot moving truck from a full-service packing company backed into the driveway. I had hired their premium, hands-off package. A team of 4 strong men and 2 efficient women got to work. I stood in the middle of the living room, a glass of iced coffee in my hand, conducting this orchestra of destruction. Everything in the master bedroom and the office, all the clothes, handbags, and shoes, packed them carefully in bubble wrap and wardrobe boxes. They're going to a penthouse in Beverly Hills. Those things were mine, symbols of my success and value. Then, I pointed towards Brenda's and Tiffany's rooms. Everything in those 2 rooms, plus all that tacky feng shui art on the walls, that fake antique tea set, and that disgusting, smelly dog crate in the backyard, throw it all into standard cardboard boxes. Where are they going, ma'am? The crew leader asked. I smirked and handed him a piece of paper with an address. A storage facility in the City of Industry. I've rented an old shipping container there. Just dump everything inside, lock it, and give me the key. The purge was swift and merciless. I watched as the movers hauled out Brenda's treasures. Jars of murky, gnarled roots she called herbal remedies, a collection of garish silk scarves from a flea market, and piles of cardboard boxes she saved to recycle. It was all unceremoniously stuffed into brown boxes. When they moved on to Tiffany's room, my satisfaction grew. The Dior and Chanel bags she flaunted on Instagram were, as I suspected, all high-quality fakes. The movers tossed them into a box with a thud. Her messy vanity, covered in cheap makeup, and the body pillow stained with Gigi's fur, all of it was swept away. The little princess's glamorous room was now bare, revealing patches of mold on the walls that had been hidden by furniture. As for Kevin's things, I kept only one item, the shattered wedding photo from the trash. I picked up the crumpled picture and placed it on top of one of his boxes, a symbolic farewell. By 6 p.m., the mansion was completely empty. Not a trace of my in-laws remained. No scent of Brenda's Bengay, no cloying perfume from Tiffany, and certainly no stench from Gigi the dog. The house was a blank slate, cold, vast, and foreign. The new owner, Mr. Harrison, would be sending his own crew to repaint tomorrow. I held the key to the rusty container in the industrial outskirts of the city. That was their new home for their worthless possessions. I had paid for 1 month of rent. After that, if they didn't claim it, the facility would dispose of it all. I was being more than generous. On the morning of December 29th, the day my in-laws were due back, I rode my old scooter back to the mansion one last time. I didn't take my new car. I wanted to keep my new wealth a secret until the final moment. I parked across the street. The gate had a brand new, heavy-duty lock, installed by the new owner. I pulled the old set of house keys from my pocket, now utterly useless. I walked over to the large, green public trash bin on the curb. Lifting the lid, I was hit by the foul smell of holiday garbage that hadn't been collected. I dropped the keys inside. Clang! The sound of metal hitting the bottom was deeply satisfying. Along with the keys, I tossed in the crumpled receipt for the storage container. They would have to dig through the trash to find the clue to their belongings. It was their first lesson in respect. When you treat someone like garbage, you'll end up in the gutter. I pulled out my phone and composed a text to Kevin. It was 10 a.m. They were probably on their way back from Lake Tahoe, tired but still chattering about their high-class trip. 2. Kevin, hope you all had a great trip. I've cleaned the house, just like Mom asked. It's spotless, not a speck of dust left. There's a little surprise waiting for you at the gate. Be sure to check the trash can carefully. Goodbye. I hit send. Then, my finger hovered over his contact. Block. Next, Brenda's number. Block. Tiffany's number. Block. I started the scooter and sped away, merging into the post-holiday traffic of Los Angeles. The wind hit my face. But this time, it wasn't dusty and stinging. It was the scent of freedom. Behind me, A storm was about to break in front of Mansion Ashana too. But that storm had nothing to do with me anymore. At 3 p.m. on the 29th of December, the sweltering L.A. sun seemed even more intense after a few days of holiday quiet. The white Escalade, the pride and joy of my in-laws, sluggishly turned onto the street, leading to the gated community. The car looked pathetic. The pearl-white paint was caked in a thick layer of reddish-brown dust from the mountain roads. Inside, the air was a thick mix of sweat, the smell of souvenirs they'd bought, and, most potently, the stench of Gigi's vomit. As I had predicted, Tiffany's darling had gotten violently carsick all over the premium leather seats during the winding mountain descent. Ugh, we're back in L.A. And it's this hot? We should have stayed another day, Brenda whined, wiping sweat from her face and propping her feet up on a suitcase. Tell Grace to get me a tall glass of iced tea and crank up the AC. She's had it easy these past few days, doing nothing. I bet the house is pristine. Gigi, baby, we're almost home, Tiffany cooed, wiping the dog's matted fur with a wet wipe. When we get inside, I'll have Grace give you a bath. Kevin said nothing, focused on driving. He was mulling over the strange text I'd sent that morning, a surprise in the trash can. He scoffed. His wife was probably just being dramatic and passive-aggressive again, hiding some peace-offering gift to get back in his good graces. He smirked. Grace never had the guts to do anything truly rebellious. The Escalade pulled up to Mansion Hayshan too. That's weird, Kevin mumbled. He pressed the button on the remote to open the gate. Nothing. The heavy iron gate remained stubbornly shut. He pressed it again, harder. The light on the remote blinked, but the gate didn't move. Is the battery dead? Or is the power out? Grumbling, Kevin got out of the car. He found the manual key and tried to insert it into the lock. It wouldn't fit. He jiggled it back and forth, sweat beading on his forehead. He bent down to inspect the lock. What the hell? The lock's been changed. By now, Brenda and Tiffany had shuffled out of the car, bringing their heat and irritation with them. What's taking so long? Just call Grace to open the gate. Brenda snapped. Kevin slammed his fist on the iron gate. Grace! Grace! Open the gate. What kind of game are you playing? Changing the locks? His shouts were met with silence. The house stood mute, all its curtains drawn, emanating a cold, unfamiliar aura. Suddenly, a small side gate opened, but it wasn't Grace who emerged. It was two men in blue security uniforms, holding batons and looking formidable. Behind them, a painter in overalls was holding a can of paint. What's with all the racket? You can't be screaming in front of someone's house like this, one of the guards barked. Kevin was baffled. Someone's house? This is my house. My wife is in there. Who are you people? The guard chuckled, looking over the family's disheveled, grimy appearance. Your house? You must be dreaming. The new owner, Mr. Harrison, bought this property 3 days ago. The papers are signed, the money's been transferred. This is now a private construction site. Now, I suggest you all move along. What? Sold the house? Brenda shrieked, her voice tearing through the quiet neighborhood. Are you crazy? This is our house. We live here. Where is my daughter-in-law? Where is Grace? There's no Grace here. The previous owner handed over the keys to an empty house on the afternoon of the 27th. The words hit them like a bolt of lightning. Kevin staggered back, his face drained of all color. He fumbled for his phone to call me. The number you have dialed is not in service. He tried WhatsApp. You cannot send messages to this contact because you have been blocked. Tiffany frantically tried to call. Blocked. Brenda tried. Blocked. My entire world had slammed shut in their faces, as decisively as they had slammed the car door on me 3 days earlier. Just then, Kevin remembered my text, a surprise in the trash can. He spun around and stared at the green public trash bin across the street, the only remaining link to the house. He sprinted towards it like a madman, flipped open the lid, and was assaulted by the putrid stench of old holiday garbage. He didn't care. He plunged his hands in, tearing through black trash bags. Kevin, what are you doing? That's disgusting. Tiffany shrieked, clutching Gigi, who was now barking hysterically. Kevin pulled out a familiar set of keys and a crumpled, balled-up piece of paper. He smoothed it out, his hands shaking as he read aloud. Receipt. A 1 storage. Shipping container, A4. City of Industry, Industrial Park. 1 month rental. Contents. Personal belongings and household waste. Household waste, Kevin whispered, looking up at his mother and sister with a look of pure dread. She, she sold the house. She threw all of our stuff in a storage container. She called our things waste. Oh, dear Lord, no. Brenda finally understood. She dropped her purse and collapsed onto the sidewalk, launching into her signature performance of a wronged victim. She slapped her thighs and wailed, "That wicked daughter-in-law. That vile creature. She sold our house and threw her own mother-in-law out on the street. Neighbors, come and see. My beautiful home. She sold it to run off with another man. Is there no justice in this world?" Her theatrical, sobbing echoed down the street, causing a few neighbors to peek out their windows. But no one came to help. They were all too familiar with Brenda's arrogant ways and seemed to have a vague sense of the unfolding drama. At that moment of peak chaos, a black town car pulled up a few feet away. The back door opened, and I stepped out. I was no longer in my frumpy house clothes. I wore a sleek black dress, a tailored white blazer, and large sunglasses that hid my impassive expression. My 7-centimeter heels clicked decisively on the pavement as I strode towards the frantic group. "Grace! You're back!" Brenda, mid-wail, shot up like a rocket and lunged at me, aiming for my hair. "You sold my house. Give me my money. You might as well kill me now." But the large security guard from before stepped between us, pushing Brenda back. I stood still, removed my sunglasses, and looked directly at Brenda, then at Kevin, who was standing stunned with his hands still covered in garbage juice. "Hello, everyone," I said, my voice light but razor-sharp. "Did you have a nice trip? Why don't you go inside and rest instead of causing a scene out here?" "You have the nerve to ask?" Kevin shrieked, pointing a trembling, filthy finger at me. "Where is the house? How did you sell it? Where are the papers? Where's the money? Give me my money." I let out a small, dry laugh and pulled a thick manila envelope from my purse. I didn't hand it to him. I tossed it onto the hood of their dust-covered Escalade. "First," I began, my voice dangerously calm, "this house was bought with my money. Your name was on the deed, as a courtesy. But you seem to have forgotten the full power of attorney you signed last year to get that loan. It's all legal, notarized, and ironclad. My sale was perfectly lawful." I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only the three of them could hear. "Second, in that envelope, you will find a unilaterally signed divorce petition. It is accompanied by proof of your affair with Crystal Nguyen, Tiffany's loan shark IOUs, and bank statements detailing Brenda's embezzlement of my money. If you refuse to sign, I will send copies of everything to your company, to your boss's wife, and I will plaster them on every telephone pole in this neighborhood." Kevin's face went from red to purple to deathly white. The name Crystal choked the words in his throat. Hearing about the loan sharks, Tiffany shrank back, clutching her dog. Brenda stood with her mouth agape, completely silenced by the exposure of her deepest secret. "Now," I said, glancing at my watch, "I suggest you all head over to your new home in that container. And you'd better hurry. The facility closes at 5 p.m. Oh, and I hope Gigi enjoys her new steel box kennel." With that, I turned and walked back to the waiting car without a single look back. Behind me, Brenda's wails started up again, but this time, they sounded pathetic and utterly hopeless. The clock struck 8 p.m. I was sitting in a quiet rooftop bar in downtown LA, sipping a cocktail and watching the glittering city lights. My phone on the table buzzed incessantly. It was Kevin. This was the 20th call in the last hour. Before that, a barrage of texts had come from various aunts and uncles from back home, all with the same threatening tone. "You are a heartless daughter-in-law. You've killed your mother-in-law. Get to the hospital immediately." I smiled and swirled my drink. The pity party had begun, just as I predicted. Brenda would never go down without a fight. She was playing her final card, weaponizing her health and my sense of guilt. I answered the phone, my voice like ice. "Hello." On the other end was Kevin's roar, punctuated by the rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors. "Are you happy now, Grace? My mother collapsed the moment you left. She's in the ER at Hoag Hospital right now. The doctor said her blood pressure spiked. She's at high risk for a stroke. Are you even human? You get down here right now to sign the paperwork and pay the hospital bill. If anything happens to my mother, I'll sue you for manslaughter." I put my glass down. "Fine," I said curtly. "I'll be right there. Don't move a thing." 30 minutes later, I arrived at the hospital. It wasn't the chaotic ER Kevin had described, but a spacious, air-conditioned VIP suite. As I approached the door, I could already hear a chorus of sobbing and hushed, dramatic whispers. I pushed the door open. A tragic tableau greeted me. Brenda was lying on the crisp white hospital bed, eyes squeezed shut, an IV drip in her arm, moaning pitifully. Surrounding her were Kevin, Tiffany, and the two most influential relatives from Kevin's side of the family, Aunt Carol and Uncle Bob, who had clearly been summoned from out of town to apply pressure. Seeing me walk in, looking chic and composed, Aunt Carol shot to her feet and pointed a finger in my face. "Well, look who it is. Her Majesty has arrived. Your mother-in-law is on her deathbed, and you're parading around in designer clothes and lipstick. Look at the ruin you've brought upon this family." Uncle Bob cleared his throat, assuming a tone of patriarchal authority. "Grace, I never thought you'd be so cold-hearted. Whatever disagreements you had, she is still your mother. No daughter-in-law secretly sells the family home and throws everyone out on the street during the holidays. What you've done is immoral. You've shamed the entire Miller family name." Kevin sat by the bed, holding his mother's hand, and looked up at me with an expression of both hatred and triumph. He thought that with the weight of the family's judgment, I would crumble, apologize, and hand over the money to buy back my peace. "You see," he seethed, "my mother worked her whole life for her children, and now she's in this state because of you. You'd better take care of this hospital bill and find a decent apartment for her to recover in. You're holding the $2.5 million from the sale. Don't you dare think you can keep it all." I listened silently to their entire performance. I glanced at Brenda, who was pretending to be on the verge of death, yet her breathing was suspiciously even. I could have sworn I saw her eyelids flutter when she heard the number $2.5 million. I pulled up a chair and sat down calmly, facing all of them, placing my designer handbag on my lap. "Are you all finished? Now it's my turn." I took my iPad from my bag, opened a file, and connected it to the smart TV on the wall. "You all say selling the house was immoral. Then, let's look at this." On the screen, crystal clear images of the 5 CD statements appeared, all under the name Brenda Miller, for a total of $250,000. Next to them, I displayed the bank records showing my transfers to her on the exact dates she opened those accounts. The room fell silent. Aunt Carol's eyes widened. Uncle Bob's jaw dropped. "Aunt Carol, Uncle Bob, please look closely. This is the money I earned through hard work. Money I gave to Mom for her retirement, to fix the family home, to help my husband's business. She didn't fix any home. She didn't spend it. She hoarded it all in her own name. My mother-in-law has $250,000 in the bank, yet she made me pay for every carton of milk, every utility bill. Is she poor? Does she need me to pay her hospital bills?" I swiped to the next image, Tiffany's loan shark IOUs. And here we have sweet, innocent Tiffany, who borrowed $50,000 at loan shark rates to fund her gambling addiction. Mom used the money I gave her to pay the weekly interest on this debt. This entire family conspired to use me like a gold mine. Finally, I displayed the kill shot, the photo of Kevin and Crystal embracing, the ultrasound picture, and the text message. "After the holidays, I'll trick her into selling her parents' old property and then dump her. And my husband, Kevin. He cheated on me, supported his pregnant mistress, and was planning to divorce me right after he could swindle me out of my inheritance. He wired his mistress $15,000 of my money for Christmas, while leaving his own wife stranded on the street for a dog." I turned off the screen and looked directly at Kevin, who was shaking like a man with a fever. "You call this a family? I call it a criminal conspiracy." On the bed, Brenda suddenly started coughing violently. She knew the act was up, especially with her $250,000 secret exposed. She shot upright, her eyes flying open with such force that Aunt Carol flinched away from the bed. You went through my safe. You're a thief," she shrieked, forgetting she was supposed to be gravely ill. I scoffed. "The safe was in my house. You hid the key under a plant. I found it while cleaning, and whose money was I stealing? The bank statements prove exactly where it came from. Would you like to contest this in court? I'm more than ready to sue to get my money back, since it's an asset acquired during the marriage that you illegally concealed." Hearing the words sue and get my money back, Brenda went pale. She feared losing her money more than death itself. I stood up and smoothed my blazer. "Aunt Carol, Uncle Bob, you are my elders, and out of respect, I came here to set the record straight. Now that the truth is out, you can decide for yourselves who is truly immoral." I turned to Kevin. "I've filed for divorce. Sign the papers if you have any shred of dignity left. As for the hospital bill," I glanced around the luxurious VIP suite. "The doctor told me on my way in that your mother just had a minor panic attack. She doesn't need a VIP suite. But since you've already checked her in, you can pay for it. With $250,000 in her savings account, a few $1,000s is just pocket change. I walked to the door and paused. Grace, you can't leave. My money, Brenda screamed, trying to scramble out of bed to chase me. But she got tangled in her IV line and fell in a heap on the floor. Kevin and Tiffany rushed to help her up, the scene descending into chaos. Aunt Carol and Uncle Bob stood frozen, not daring to say another word. They knew getting involved now would only lead to trouble, or worse, Brenda asking them for a loan. I slammed the door shut behind me, cutting off the sound of their shrieks. The hospital corridor was quiet, smelling of antiseptic. As I walked away, the sound of my heels on the linoleum was crisp, steady, and free. The drama was over. The audience had dispersed, and I, the lead actress, had just given the performance of a lifetime the role of a ruthless woman fighting for her own survival. I took out my phone and blocked the numbers of Aunt Carol and Uncle Bob. From this moment on, my world was completely free of parasites. 1 month after that fateful holiday, Los Angeles was in the grip of a dry spell. The March heat felt oppressive, as if it were trying to suck the life out of everything. In a rundown apartment complex deep in a Compton alley, a place Kevin's family never imagined they would even see, let alone live in the air, was thick with despair. The 150-square-foot studio apartment reeked of mildew and old food. The belongings from the storage container were piled high, leaving no room to walk. Brenda lay on a mattress on the floor, a wet towel on her forehead, moaning incessantly. The sickness she had faked in the hospital had become real. The shock of losing the house and receiving my lawsuit to claim my share of her hidden assets had triggered a minor stroke. Now, she struggled to walk, completely dependent on others. But the real tragedy wasn't her health. It was the cold, official letter from the bank that had arrived 3 days ago. The savings accounts under the name Brenda Miller have been frozen by a temporary court order pending the resolution of your divorce and asset dispute case. The $250,000 she considered her lifeblood was now trapped, visible on paper but untouchable. Kevin sat slumped in a corner, holding a termination letter. He had been fired that morning. The official reason was corporate restructuring, but he knew the truth. His company's biggest client was the food corporation where I was a director. The moment I formally terminated our contract, citing a loss of confidence in our partner's integrity, his company went into a tailspin. As the primary liaison, he was the first head on the chopping block. He had lost his wife, his house, his job, and now, his last hope, his phone vibrated. He snatched it up, praying it was a message from Crystal, the mistress carrying his son. He had been calling and texting her for a week, desperate to get back the $15,000 Christmas gift to have some cash to survive. But the message on the screen was all too familiar. This number is no longer in service. Her social media was deleted. She had blocked him everywhere. Kevin scrambled out of the apartment and sped on his motorcycle to the apartment building where Crystal lived. He pounded on the door. A strange man answered. "Who are you looking for?" "Crystal? She moved out last week. Heard she took off with some rich guy who was visiting from out of the country." But was she pregnant?" Kevin stammered, clinging to the last shred of hope. The man snorted. "Pregnant? That girl. She was with 3 or 4 different guys at once. Her stomach was flat as a board. Saw her out drinking at the bar every weekend." "Sounds like you got played, buddy." Kevin collapsed right there in the hallway. The $15,000. The son and heir. His true love. It was all a spectacular lie. Crystal had smelled his failure the moment he was kicked out of the mansion and had vanished with his last chunk of money. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, another storm was brewing for Tiffany. Bang! 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 A violent pounding on the door made Gigi, who was chewing on a bone under a table, start barking wildly. Before Tiffany could answer, the flimsy wooden door was kicked in. 3 heavily tattooed men, with menacing faces, stormed inside. "Where's Tiffany? The interest payment is due. Did you think you could hide from us in this dump?" Tiffany cowered in a corner, her face ashen. "Please, just give me a few more days. My family is going through a tough time. My mom is sick." "Sick? If you don't have the money, you pay with something else," the leader grunted. His men started ransacking the cluttered apartment. They pulled out the fake designer bags Tiffany was once so proud of. The leader picked one up, inspected it, and threw it down in disgust. "What is this garbage? It's all fake. This junk is worthless." His eyes fell on Gigi, who was barking her head off. He grabbed the dog by the scruff of its neck and lifted it into the air. The dog yelped in terror. "This dog looks like it might be worth more than all this trash combined. We'll take it. We can sell it to a lab for a few $100. No. Please don't take Gigi. I'm begging you." Tiffany screamed, throwing herself at the man's feet. "Don't take her. I'll pay you. I promise I'll pay you." "Pay me with what?" the man sneered, kicking her away. Brenda, lying on the mattress, watched her daughter being assaulted and her precious dog being taken. She tried to scream, but only gurgling sounds came out. Tears streamed down her face, but she was helpless. Finally, with a trembling hand, she pointed to the inside of her blouse. Tiffany understood, rushed over, and pulled out a 5-gram gold ring, the last piece of real value Brenda had hidden away. Tiffany offered the ring to the loan sharks. "Here, this is real gold. Please, take it as an interest payment." The leader bit the ring, then smirked. "Fine, we'll leave the dog for now. But this only covers this month's interest. We'll be back next week. If you don't have the principal, we're taking you and the dog." They left, leaving the apartment in shambles. Tiffany hugged Gigi and sobbed. The dog, the very reason I was kicked out of the car that day, was now trembling, its fur dirty and matted from a month without grooming. It looked at Tiffany with fear, all of its former pampered arrogance gone. At 5 p.m., I walked out of my Class A office building in Century City. My brand new car, driven by my new assistant, was waiting for me. Just as I reached the lobby, a disheveled figure rushed towards me. Building security moved to intercept him, but I held up a hand. It was Kevin. He was wearing a wrinkled, faded shirt. His face was gaunt and unshaven, his eyes sunken and dark. He looked 10 years older. He saw me, radiant and powerful in my custom-tailored suit, and immediately looked down at the ground. All his former masculine pride was gone, replaced by the pathetic shame of a broken man. "Grace," he croaked, his voice raspy. I'm so sorry. I was wrong." I stood still, emotionless, adjusting the watch on my wrist. "You weren't wrong, Kevin. You were just unlucky. Unlucky that you thought I was a fool." He dropped to his knees, right there in the lobby, ignoring the stares of passers-by. "I was tricked, Grace. Crystal lied to me. My mom had a stroke. Tiffany is being hunted by loan sharks. Our family, it's all ruined. For the sake of our 5 years together, please, drop the lawsuit. Unfreeze my mom's account so she can get treatment. I beg you. I'll do anything. I'll be your slave for the rest of my life to pay you back." I looked down at him, kneeling at my feet. This sight should have filled me with triumph. But strangely, all I felt was a distant pity. Pity for the woman I used to be, who had loved and sacrificed for such a pathetic man. I leaned down and whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. "Our 5 years together? I paid for that time with a mansion, a luxury car, with every meal I cooked, with my entire youth. And how did you repay me? With a seat for a dog and a pre-planned divorce. We're even." I straightened up and walked towards my car. "Oh, and by the way," I added, "that $250,000? Legally, half of it is mine as a marital asset. The court will divide it. You can use your half to pay for your mother's care. But my lawyer tells me that after court fees and paying off Tiffany's debts, you'll be lucky if there's anything left. Good luck." I got in the car and closed the door. The car pulled away smoothly, leaving Kevin kneeling on the cold pavement. In the rearview mirror, I saw him collapse forward, his shoulders shaking. Whether he was crying from regret or self-pity, it no longer mattered. The sky over Los Angeles was beautiful that evening. The smog had cleared, revealing a brilliant sunset. I closed my eyes and leaned back against the headrest. The 5-year-long nightmare was finally, truly over. 6 months later, the August monsoons had arrived, draping the city in a perpetual, melancholic gray. But inside my 2-story penthouse in Beverly Hills, the atmosphere was warm and bright. I sat in a velvet armchair, a glass of red wine in my hand, looking out over the glittering lights of the city below. 6 months had passed since that stormy holiday season. It wasn't a long time, but it was long enough for a complete transformation. I had gone from being a long-suffering wife, enduring daily contempt, back to being myself, proud, independent, and free. The divorce was finalized 2 months ago. The court's ruling was so perfectly just that I had to laugh when I read the judgment. The $250,000 in Brenda's account was deemed a marital asset and split down the middle. I got my half back. Brenda and Kevin got the other half. But karma has its own way of balancing the books. The moment their half was unfrozen, it vanished. A huge chunk went to pay off the principal and exorbitant interest to the loan sharks to save Tiffany. The rest was consumed by Brenda's ongoing medical bills and the legal fees they had wasted trying to sue me to get the house back. My phone buzzed, interrupting my thoughts. It was a message from David, the P.I. We had become good friends, and he occasionally sent me street-level updates, even though I no longer asked. Thought you might get a kick out of this. Took it this afternoon at a traffic stop. I opened the photo. In the pouring L.A. rain, a man in a tattered plastic poncho sat hunched over an old scooter. A food delivery box was strapped to the back. The man's face was gaunt and hollow-eyed as he stared blankly into the traffic jam. It was Kevin, the man with a master's degree, the man who complained his wife was crowding his car, the man who generously gave his mistress $15,000, was now earning a few dollars per delivery in a storm. David sent another text. Heard he's working day and night to support them all. The old lady is bedridden in a dump in the valley. The sister got a job at a factory, but quit after a few days, complaining of a sore back. Now, she sells some sketchy skin cream online, but no one's buying. As for the dog, Gigi, I think they sold her. Haven't seen it around. I stared at the photo for a long time, waiting for a feeling of satisfaction or glee to rise up. But strangely, it never came. All I felt was a profound sense of peace, like seeing a news story about a stranger's misfortune. You feel a flicker of sympathy, and then you move on. They were no longer my pain, my burden, or my concern. I texted David back. Thanks. You don't need to send me any more updates on them. To me, they're already gone. I deleted the message and the photo. It was a simple act, but it symbolized my final, absolute release. I wasn't blocking them out of anger or fear. I was deleting them because they no longer deserved to take up even a single kilobyte of space in my life's memory. I put down my phone and walked over to the open suitcase in the middle of my room. Tomorrow, I was flying to Europe for 15 days. It was a dream I'd had since college, but had put on hold to get married. I packed vibrant silk dresses, my favorite heels, and a book I'd been meaning to read. There were no clothes for a husband, no icy hot for a mother-in-law, no extraneous items for anyone else. Only things for me. I picked up the plane ticket from my vanity. First class. Seat 1A. I smiled. 6 months ago, I was kicked out of my own car, denied a basic seat for a dog. 6 months later, I was sitting in the best seat on a plane, heading towards a new horizon. Life is remarkably fair. If others don't value your place, you must walk away and find a higher, more deserving one for yourself. Never accept a back seat. Never settle for being crowded out by contempt. The next morning, LAX was bustling. I pulled my suitcase, its wheels gliding smoothly over the polished floor. The morning sun streamed through the terminal's glass walls, illuminating my face. A face with light makeup, radiating the quiet glow of confidence. As I walked through security, I glanced back at Los Angeles one last time. Somewhere out there, in the city's crowded alleys, some people were paying the price for their betrayal. They were trapped in dark past of their own making. And I was walking towards the sun. The airline announcer's voice came over the loudspeaker. Now boarding first-class passengers for Flight 72 to Paris at Gate 12A. I took a deep breath, smiled, and walked straight ahead. My new dawn had truly begun.